Hello, I'm Kippi from KippiAtHome.com. Welcome to my channel. Tonight we're going to be crafting up this gorgeous wreath. It's so simple to make, so let's get started. Okay, let's make this gorgeous wreath. It's so simple to make. I'm starting out with my little form. I got it from the Dollar Tree, and you guessed it, for $1. So I'm going to start out. I'm just going to cut my little tag off and start making my pom-poms. But before I started, I like to kind of figure out how many I'm going to use. I use 2 sizes, and I will link to those below so you can see exactly what they are that I use. And then I decided at the very end add a few smaller ones, so I'll link to that too as well. You can find that in the description below. And I have another video with a more detailed on how to make a pom-pom, and I'll link to that, but let's just go through real quick. I'm going to start out with one color, and you can start, kind of start anywhere, but I'm going to kind of start in the middle or at the end, doesn't matter. And I'm going to hold that on there and try to wrap it around to hold that loose end on. And then I'm going to wrap and wrap and wrap and wrap until it's pretty full. And then I'm going to push it and then wrap some more. And you can go over it a couple of times, just depends on how thick you want them. And one thing about putting these pom-poms on this way, the back of the pom-pom is going to be flat. So if the pom-pom's going to hang and you're going to see all the way around it, you want it to be really, probably a lot thicker than what I'm making them for this one. So you keep that in mind. Once you get that one finished, that side finished, you can just loop around and don't worry about how to get over there. Just get on over to the other side. So close the side you just filled and then open up the other side and just proceed like you did on the first side until you get that wrapped all the way to where you want it to be finished. All right, now we're going to close in that second side and cut away our yarn from the thread that we were feeding onto it, and we're going to start cutting away the yarn to make the pom-pom. And this means we're going to start at one end, and kind of there's a channel in there between the 2 halves, if you will. And I'm just going to use a sharp pair of scissors, and these are my favorite scissors. They have the knife edge, and I will put the link to those below. If you do any sewing, fabric cutting, or anything, these are my must-haves. So I'll cut along there, then I'm going to turn it and do the other side as well. I'm going to do the same thing, and then I'm going to take a piece of yarn that's, I'm going to make it probably a little longer than it needs to be because I can always trim it. And this piece of yarn needs to be long enough to tie off in the center as well as to attach the pom-pom to the wreath, or if you're hanging it on something. So you decide if you are going to glue or thread through or whatever, then you could cut that string off, but you'll see, you'll probably want to keep that one. So just pull that cut off piece. I mean, I'm saying you could, cut 8-10 inches of it, maybe even 12, depends on how big your pom-pom maker is. And then that same little area where you cut through, now you're going to go all the way through it because that is going to hold everything together in the middle. And now if you can pull it apart, and you can see I was struggling a little bit there, if you can pull it apart and then finish tightening it, you'll get a little bit tighter because the little metal thing that's in the middle, or whatever the thing that holds it together, keeps it from getting really tight in there. So you want it tight because you don't want your little pieces of yarn to fall out. So tighten it, and sometimes I go around it a second time and just tighten it up real good. And then you just shake it, and then you can easily see where you need to trim. Since I have a Valentine or a heart-shaped wreath that I'm going to use, I would like to start at a point. It doesn't matter, but you want to end at a point. So I thought instead of ending there, I'll begin there to make sure that I have exactly what I want at that point. But if you're doing a round wreath, you might not be that important. So I thought it would be pretty to, start out like with a red one at the end. So I'm going to tie it on here and kind of figure out where I want it. And you can kind of move these around, and you can untie them and retie them and all kinds of things, and tie them to each other and glue them and whatever. So I'm putting that one there. It is a little bit strange because it's gonna kind of dangle, but I wanted to make it a longer point because once I fill it up, it'll be hard to see the shape. selecting your next color. And if they're all the same color and size, might be a little simpler, but I'm pushing it to the front, and you can tie it and move it. As you can see, you can move it to that little front thing, and then I'm going to kind of decide, because I can move them around on the form while they're on there, so they're not like they're permanently until I fill it all in. So just decide, and I want to do the couple different sizes, and then I decided once I got going that I really wanted some small ones. So those extra small ones I think add a little more texture. This is one that's a wee bit smaller, and if you just want to buy 2 of these little pom-pom makers, you can actually just trim it down and get that size without purchasing a 3rd one. But I have a link below, and it is a kit, and it has almost all the sizes, and it's very inexpensive. And these are so cute on everything, anything. You can make them on key fobs, on baskets, on your Christmas stockings. I mean, anything and everything. They're so pretty. Okay, as I'm coming to the end, I'm having a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out which one, because they're kind of all there. What color? So they'll have to be a little bit repeated, but that's okay. And I didn't want to put too many red ones in there. They're the ones I use the least of, since they really, draw your eye in, and I wanted your eye to travel around. So the red ones, some of those that were the larger ones, I trimmed them just a wee bit because they just seem a little overpowering, but it's up to you. And then you can kind of see where the holes are, and you might go back in, see how that, you can kind of see there's a hole there, and fill it in. It's very simple to do, and tie it through, and that's one of those small ones, and that's where they really don't take up a lot of room, but they can fill in those little holes, and you can kind of move them around and fluff them, and it all works out. I can't wait to make these. I'm going to make them for, not in a heart shape, of course, but I'm going to make them for everything. They're so much fun. I think I gave this one needed a little bit more of a trim, and it needed a thread in it. So I give it a little bit of a trim, and then I had to add, and I'm going to cut that one off, and I don't know if I accidentally cut the long part off. So I have to. And so if you make this mistake, which obviously I did, you can just cut a piece of yarn and use a yarn needle, and that link will be below. I actually bought this needle over 25 years ago for my daughter to use, so she could craft in my craft room with me, and this was a safe thing for her to use. And now she uses it today, over 25 years later, to craft herself. So so there I've made it, and now you can see how you could string them together as well. If you were making like a big pom-pom strand. Well, if you've been following my blog, you know that no wreath is ever complete without at least some bit of ribbon and a bow. I had the tiniest little bit of ribbon, and I have 2 of them that are this cream color, 2 different ones, and neither of them really are enough to make a whole bow. So I'm going to try to use them together, and we'll see if it works out. I'm making over just a little bit of a loop and then another little loop, but I'm trying to see how I can conserve a ribbon so I can get it made. But any other color, I tried some other colors. It's pretty bright, so this kind of tones it down. So I'm going to use my very favorite crafting supply, and that would be a zip tie and ribbon, and 2 different ribbons because I didn't have enough, and a pair of scissors. Just cut it off, and then I'm going to use the pieces left there. I don't have enough to make the tie in the middle, but I do have enough to make a little streamer, so I'm just going to make a little streamer area, and then I'm going to use that. It'll look good enough, like something I got on sale. So I'm going to push it up in there and make a little streamer, lasso it all together with a zip tie. Now here's my little zip tie hint, and you can imagine how I learned this. Lots of trial and error, mainly errors, but I like to zip it down a wee bit, till it's almost there, and then adjust my bow. And then once you zip it down all the way, that's it. You'd have to cut it off to redo it. My second tip on that is to add, if you're going to be tying a bow onto something, you can use a piece of floral wire. I'm using yarn since that seems to be what my product is made out of, so why not use a piece of yarn? So I'm adding a piece of yarn along the back of it, so when I go to adhere it to my wreath, I can tie it on using the same color yarn that I've used in my wreath. So that center, I'm going to use, I was going to try to use the same thing, but it's way too short. So I'm not going to be able to do it. So I'm just going to use a piece of leftover, and it's this tiny piece of leftover ribbon from another project. This is not going to work. So I resorted to, this has a little more texture in it, but that's okay. It's the same color. So I like to use and reuse and upcycle, and so this is all fun. And during this time, you know, of it's just been difficult to find some supplies. So if you can make use out of something you have at home, that's all the better. And these, my friends, these are the absolute best snips for a crafter I have ever used. I will link those below, and if you don't have a pair, I would be asking my Valentine to show me some love and give me a pair of those with the box candy, of course. All right, I'm going to use that yarn that I put in the back of it when I zip tied, and I'm just going to tie it on where I want. And if I don't like where I want it, where I put it, then I will be able to move it around because I can untie it from the back with using the yarn. So once I get it secured, then I'm going to fluff, and then I'm going to treat the little ends. I'm going to trim them into little chevrons like I like to do. And you can always reposition, and you can reposition even after you put it up. You might say, oh, it looks better this way. So I would recommend, until you're real happy with it, maybe you don't cut the ends off or tie it into a knot, but maybe into a bow. Then you can tie it into a knot and cut it off. But anyway, so I'm going to take the little ends of my ribbon and cut my little chevrons. So I bend the little backs together and trim, and it is looking so adorable. I'll be hanging this over my fireplace, but you could hang it, you know, anywhere in your home or on your front door. But I'm going to do a little fireplace. I mean, the winter gets dreary, and we've just been inside and been cooped up for so long. I just want something fun, light, and airy. And that's why I wanted to use pinks and not just red. I want it to not look like Christmas, but to look like Valentine's Day, even though I do enjoy Christmas decorating, by the way. All right, she looks great. I can't wait to hang her up. And now what I did across the back to hang it up is I used a pipe cleaner and made a little hook across the back. Or you can just use the wire itself to hang it up. All right, that turned out really cute. And I hope y'all had fun. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell, and have a very happy Valentine's Day. See you soon.